WNBA basketball is back, but it's only preseason. So let's take a quick look through the preseason games, what the possible rosters might look like, and get in our predictions. Alright, and for the first matchup, we have the Indiana Fever versus the New York Liberty. Now all the preseason games are free to watch on the WNBA app, and this game is on Ion. And with all the other streaming apps that are going to be necessary this season, that's a conversation for another time. So if we're lucky, we'll see our starters during that first quarter. You know, a lot of preseason games, obviously we are not going to see our stars, especially for the entirety of the game. Now looking at Indiana, you'll probably have Mitchell, Clark, Boston, Hull, Billings, depending on how they want that to look in that first quarter. Again, we'll probably get our starters and then they'll trickle out as the game goes on, and we'll probably see a lot of our rookies with Raven Johnson, maybe Jessica Timmons, but we'll get to see Ty Harris, Timpson, Dantas. We'll see all the players the teams are still evaluating through training camp. And the hardest part about these games are going to be the cuts, because there are still a lot of cuts to come. Now Indiana doesn't have a lot for their team, but they're still looking to lose 1 to 2 players. Alright, and looking at it here, you obviously have Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stewart, Jonquil Jones, Satu Sabally. I'm not sure if she's still recovering from injury, but especially with it being a preseason game, if it's any question at all, she just won't play. Same with Benijah Laney Hamilton, so we'll probably see Allen, Phoebich, Gardner, really a majority of the rookies. The New York Liberty is one of the teams with a lot of training camp contracts, so we'll probably see players on the floor again as they reevaluate and see who they want to keep on the team. Now just considering that, knowing this is not necessarily a game of starter versus starters, I'll probably give this one to the Fever, just because the players they're going to have will probably be closer to your second string rather than third string in training camp contracts taking over the floor. So just considering that, I'll give this first game to the Fever. Alright, and then for the second game of the day, we have the Los Angeles Sparks versus the Nigerian national team. And I can't say I'm familiar with their team. What you see here are just their main players, so it'll be just an interesting exhibition game. But for the Sparks, again, if we're lucky, we'll see NECA take the floor, Kelsey Plum, Ariel Atkins, Dearica Hamby, and in that 4 slot, I'm hoping we see Ray Burrell. We'll probably see Cameron Brink, Wheeler take the floor, and then as the game trickles on, usually these games are blowouts, and even if it's not, again, this is a preseason game, so we'll probably see Fegan, Cannon, Van Loo, and maybe even Tanai Latson. We may not see Hassett in part, just depending on how the game flows. Of course, they're evaluating their talent, but I assume this should still be a respectable game, but hands down, I'm going to give it to the Sparks. Okay, and then for the third matchup of the day, we have the Chicago Sky versus the Phoenix Mercury. Now, for Chicago, I know Carrington is still coming back from injury, same with Vandersloot, so we should see the other starters, Azarae Stevens, Skylar Diggins, Camila Cardoso, Rakia Jackson, and probably Rachel Banham. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a lot of JC Sheldon, and then of course their draftee Gabriela Jaquez, and as the game keeps going, Haley Van Lith and Maddie Westbill. Chicago is one of the teams where I feel like the starters are going to play a little bit longer. They are going to try to get their reps in as quickly as possible, even if it's just a strategic move. Whereas when you look at the Mercury, you will see Alyssa Thomas, Kalia Copper, Whitcomb. I don't think anybody's injured on this team, but they'll probably pull their starters a lot quicker. First preseason game, we'll see them, hey, how you doing? Get up and down the court a little bit, and then they'll be right on the bench. And even more than the New York Liberty, the Mercury have a couple of handfuls of training camp contracts. So we could see a lot of players we don't recognize on top of your Cara Dunn and Maggie Dugan. These teams are doing a lot of evaluating. So I have to give this game to the Chicago Sky. I just don't see their third and fourth string players getting as much minutes, getting as much runtime, whereas the Mercury probably will, just to still filter out who's going to make it. The Mercury will have a lot of cuts before the start of the season. Alright, and then looking at the Minnesota Lynx versus the Washington Mystics. Now, for the Lynx, they do have a couple of recovering players. I believe Collier and McBride are still recovering, but that does mean we'll get to see Olivia Miles, obviously Courtney Williams, Natasha Howard, and probably a good amount of time from Kosu there. So while the Lynx don't have as many training camp contracts as the Liberty or even the Mercury, they're still a bit above average here. We could see some players get their shot here along with their draftees. They got Lena White, and as long as she's healthy, we should see Jalen Sherrod, not just in this game, but a good bit in the preseason here. Again, the Lynx have a good amount of training camp contracts, so we'll probably see a lot of shuffling and, again, evaluating who they have before making all these cuts. And then looking at the Washington Mystics, I think Austin is still coming back from overseas play. Even if she's back, she could be recovering or just taking a rest day. But I do expect to see Michaela Onyenwere, Citron, Kiki Erafin, definitely your rookies in Cody, Betts, even Amore. I'm looking forward to what they have going on with Harmon, even Dukeledge. The Mystics are probably one of the teams I'm most looking forward to seeing take the floor. Even if it's not the game I'm most excited to see, this is a team. I really want to see what they do with everything they have going on here. Because not only do they have a really good starting five, considering, because we know they have a lot of forwards, but they have some pretty good role players. They have some decent players off the bench. My main concern is just what they're going to do with everybody and where they're going to be placed, because they're going to have to make trades, concessions down the line, even if it's not this season. They don't have as many training camp contracts as a lot of other teams, so what you see is what you get. Their cuts may not be as surprising, but we may see some play from Maya Hollingshed, Alex Wilson, Nyla Harris, and only because of that unsurety, I'll say we'll give it to the Lynx on this one. Just taking the floor, a hungry number 2 pick. Players on the Lynx that will play are probably more concerned about making the team than as many players on the Mystics, so I'll give it to the Lynx on this one. Alright, and then on to the last game of the night, my absolute 2 favorite teams. One of those games where you just want everybody to win. I was obviously a Storm fan before a Valkyries fan, so let's just walk through it here and see who my brain comes up with as we look through the lineup. Alright, so looking at the Storm, Ezzy McBeggar, Samuelson, and Horson are all coming back from injury, so taking the floor for starters will more than likely have Natisha Heidemann, Jade Melbourne, Dominique Malonga, Stephanie Dolson, and Lexi Brown. Now, the Storm don't have a lot of training camps, but they definitely have a few to keep an eye on. We will definitely see our fams Zaya Cook, Flau'jae Johnson, Tyana Mir throughout preseason, but the Storm will still be evaluating Mackenzie Holmes, Grace Van Sluten, another Jalen Brown, and Rania Davis. So we could see other training camp players play, but I think we'll see their draftees play more than anything. While I do think they'll give their draftees some runtime, I feel like this is another team closer to the idea of getting runtime together like the Skies, but because there's so many injuries, it's just going to be shuffled around. But it'll be good runtime and good developmental time for all of the young players on the Storm. Alright, and then on to the Valkyries. I do believe we still have some players coming over from international play and some late game decisions on who's actually going to take the floor. But if we're lucky, we'll see Gabby Williams, Veronica Burton, Kayla Thornton, Kyla Charles, and Janelle Salon. Now, I do think we'll see Tiffany Hayes, Cecilia Zandalicini, Elania Rupert. If Jositi is here, she'll definitely take the floor. And then as the game trickles on, Kia Stokes, Kate Martin, Caitlin Chen, and Letitia Amahir. The main thing I can give the Valkyries here is just experience and poise at this point. The Storm just feel a little young. I feel better for their future seasons than this one in particular. And after losing Ezzy, we'll have to see what their game plan is on the floor, especially in these opening weeks of the season. So I'll have to give this one to the Valkyries, even if Gabby Williams doesn't take the floor. This is another team with some training camp contracts that want to make the team. Even looking at Caitlin Chen and Letitia Amahir, they're on training camp contracts. So there will be a lot of cuts, not just from these two teams, but just throughout the league. So I'm excited to see who we get to see take the floor on preseason, and hopefully the drop off isn't too big from the first quarter to the second half of these games.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, players.